All right. If I had a gavel, I'd be hitting it right now. If I had a gavel, I'd be hitting it harder right now. Okay. All right. I am calling to order District Advisory Board for District 3, June 5th, 2019. We have the agenda in front of everybody. Has everybody had a chance to see the agenda? Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made? Seeing no additions or corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. I'll hold on to these for a second. We have approval of the minutes for May 1st, 2019. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Any additions or corrections? We have a motion to approve as submitted, and we have a second. Any further discussion? Right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we have no scheduled staff reports this month. So we will move right into our first. We have our budget simulator and preliminary budget overview. And we have finance department here today to give us a presentation. Thank you.
Right, and so we're on Facebook Live?
Yes.
So what I will do for folks who are watching from Facebook is, as we move through the slides, I will just say the name of the slide, because the presentation is posted online, so that'll make it easy for you to follow along. Do you have any extra copies? There's a few for folks in the audience. They want them. So my name is Elizabeth Poultry. I am a budget officer for the city of Wichita. I know Mark Manning has been here many times before. He actually was promoted into a different role. He's a treasurer now. So I stepped into his spot. Tonight we're going to talk about the proposed budget for next year, as well as the upcoming 10-year CIP, which is the capital improvement program. So do you have a? I'll just give you a few. Okay, great. So click, yes, or a week or something, or not. So on slide 2 here, since 2017, the city of Wichita has been using a zero-based budget approach to develop our budget every year. We really looked at every single organization, every single program in the organization, and took it back to a blank sheet approach. And out of that, we grouped all of the things that we do, and out of that came a new mission statement. We have been striving to pursue excellence in a focused number of priority programs. And so the mission statement should resonate with all of you. It's to keep Wichita safe, to grow our economy, to build and to maintain infrastructure, and to provide conditions for living well. On to the next slide. So as part of that effort, we have the mission statement and so forth, but we were really curious, of course, when we do the budget every year, about matching the dollars to the services we provide. And one thing that we're doing different this year, in addition to the social media town hall, is that there's a budget simulator online. Has anyone done the budget simulator yet? All right, well, then this is a great opportunity. Right now, we're about 1,200 people participated, and our goal is to have more than that by the time the budget simulator is finished in 10 days. Once it's finished, we're going to post the results on that same webpage, and we'll use the data during the budget process. And as we go into the calendar, you'll see why that's important. And we'll use those themes too. The social media town hall has become a fan favorite on Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor, so we'll use some of that information for that.
And
Yes.
this is a budget simulator.
Oh, do you have access to the internet?
Yes.
Maybe, do you want to do that now, or should we do it afterwards?
Let's do that.
After.
Let's do that.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Okay.
I piqued your interest. You'll be interested all the way to the end now, right?
Okay, go.
All right. So the next slide is the calendar. Usually these meetings, I follow up on Park and Rec telling us all the fun things that they have planned for the summer. Well, these are all the fun things the budget office has planned for you this summer. So the budget simulator will close in 10 days. We'll have our social media town hall on Wednesday, June 26th. The city manager will be presenting the budget on July 23rd. That's really important. We have about 5 weeks between the time the simulator closes and the city manager presenting the budget, because we want to take a lot of time this year to sort through that information and match what people, the feedback we're getting with the budget that's going to be put together. On the July 23rd meeting is a public hearing. We additionally have an additional public hearing on August 6th. And then on August 13th is a public hearing and then the adoption of the budget. So day before school starts, and also the day of neighborhood night out, so you can be extra civic on that time. So you laugh. It's true. Super civic day, right? So we'll focus on the general fund tonight. The general fund is the main taxing fund for the city of Wichita. It funds a third of the budget. It's the main source for the city departments that people care about the most, like fire, police, parks, libraries, and street maintenance. There's been a lot of technological and legal changes in the revenue environment that have really been made it challenging for the general fund. One of those, for example, is in the area of franchise fees, which we'll talk about a little bit more. The revenues in the general fund to the general fund are economically sensitive, and they're also impacted by assessed valuation, which will receive our preliminary assessed valuation notice from the county this month. Okay.
This means they get offended easily. They're economically sensitive.
Yeah, yes. Well, like, for example, we'll go into interest earnings. Interest earnings, because of economic conditions, the Fed's raised interest rates 7 times recently, so our interest earnings increases. But if the economy goes the other direction, that's one of the first revenue types that we don't have. Or if another way that our revenue is economically sensitive is that if the economy is good and things look good for you and your car is we just had this happen, took the car to the shop and they're like, you need to do this and this and this. Well, if your personal economics aren't good, then you'll just defer the repair. And if you can, you might pay for the repair. And if things are really great for you and you feel good about the economy, you might buy a new car. So all those different things impact revenue in some way or another. So
My whole life is economically sensitive.
we're real.
Fixed
Wouldn't it be
income.
nice to be the place where it's not economically sensitive, but I don't
I
know.
think
Will
so,
ever be.
but I don't know.
Yeah. So that's just an example of that. So in the general fund, we're just talking about revenue. Property tax is about a third of general fund revenue. I'd like to point that out because I think a lot of times people assume that general fund property tax is the whole game for the general fund. It's a third. We're on slide 6 for you following along at home. Franchise fees is a fifth of general fund revenue. What those are we have agreements with utilities for the right to operate in the right of way, and then there's a franchise fee on every utility bill. Sales tax is it's just a little over a tenth, and then our other main revenue sources up there as well. Yes.
Yeah, 20% seems pretty,
For other,
yeah.
all the other, they're all really small though, individually, but that's things like fines and penalties, rental income, charges for services, and insurance service, licenses and permits. There you go. All right, on to the next one.
Has internet sales had any impact on the city budget?
Yes, it's had an impact on sales tax, our sales tax earnings. It's really hard to gauge the extent of that, and that is a really great segue into this slide.
Okay.
So, I think for a lot of us, at least watching city financial conditions, 2018 felt like a good year. Felt like a solid year for revenue. We had a $2.5 million ending surplus at the end of 2018 in the general fund. However, so our adjusted revenue growth for last year is 3.8%, which felt pretty good, right? Felt good, right, Councilman?
It was
Felt
amazing.
good, it's been amazing. But if you look back at those gray bars, before I worked for the city of Wichita, and like a bad penny or something, 3.8% would have been quite a bit of a disappointment. And so back to your question about sales tax. What we used to experience in the past during a recession was a dip and then maybe an even year, like in 2002 and 2003. And then in 2004, the revenue came roaring back, particularly in sales tax. So there was some pent-up demand for goods, and then the recession goes away and people go buy that new car or that new coat or whatever that they're looking to buy. We've not experienced that coming out of the last recession. A lot of that, and I think that that recessionary period occurred during the same time that there was a lot of technological change in how people purchase goods and also in how people access information, whether telephone lines or cable TV. So the two things happened at once. So it's kind of hard for me to tell you the extent to which that has an impact, but it has. So this slide shows.
Thank you.
Does that help? Sir? Does that
Yes,
answer your question?
yes,
Okay,
that's
great.
what I mean.
On to the
Thank
next slide.
You can help him, but you don't.
So recession impact on revenues. The impact on revenues, a lot of them is on a lagging basis, particularly for property tax. They look at last year's sales, then you get a bill or you get your valuation, and then that impacts taxes for the next year. Sales tax is a little lagging. Motor vehicle tax is lagging. Some of them happen more quickly, such as interest earnings. And like what we've experienced, usually general fund revenues are flat or decline for a few years. It was a lot of a few years the last time. So we've got some models in place based on recessions in the past to use as a guide. So number 9. So on the expenditure side of the general fund, the city of Wichita, particularly on the general fund side, is in a really people-intensive business. To provide fire, police, those types of services, people are our biggest part of the budget. In fact, in the fire department, salaries and benefits for fire is 94% of the budget. So other expenditures are things like fuel and materials. And those tend to grow a little more slowly. Expenditure growth has been a lot slower in the last decade than it was before. We've really kept that in check during the last 10 years in order to balance our budgets. And most of that growth has been in public safety. Slide 10, please. This really illustrates that growth in public safety that we've been experiencing since this century began in 2000. That blue line in the middle is a CPI rate, other consumer price index, or the inflation, the base inflation rate. So you'll notice that has increased a little bit every year. The green line is police and fire, and that has increased nearly every year. And we've graphed them differently, and sometimes one grows a little bit more than the other, but generally they follow the same pattern. What you'll notice, though, is underneath the blue line is all other general fund expenditures. So that's street maintenance, libraries, parks, and so forth. And so in order to balance the budget during the recessionary period, those expenditures were cut in order to balance the budget, since public safety is a key priority for the organization, and those expenditures grew. So during that time, civilian employees or civilian employee base has decreased by about a third. On to number 11. So I said in the last slide that during the recession, we balanced the budget. And one of the reasons why we balanced the budget was in order to maintain our reserves. Reserves are really important for flexibility in case there's an emergency, or also in the case of providing cash flow, because our biggest revenue source, as I said before, property tax, we only receive that, mostly that comes in 2 big payments in the year. So it's kind of hard when your biggest paycheck comes in twice. So you need to make sure that you have that cash flow. Our policy is to have a reserve level of 10% or higher, and at the close of last year, we were at 14.8%. So slide number 12. So reserves, of course, are important. They provide flexibility. When the government was closed, the federal government was closed most recently, that was the longest federal government shutdown in history. Because we have cash reserves, there was no interruption in services that are things that are grant funded from the federal government. Usually we get paid, we get reimbursed from the federal government for those services. So we were lagging in the reimbursements we were receiving, but we had no interruption of service because of the reserves. So it's really important. Also rating agencies, which have a role, they rate the city of Wichita, and that impacts our interest rates when we go out to the market to issue bonds. And they find reserves to be very important, and so that results in favorable ratings and favorable rates. Number 13. So looking into the future, we expect the same moderate revenue and expenditure growth that we've been seeing in the most recent period. We expect a continued emphasis on public safety. This year's budget includes the implementation of phase 1 of the police staffing study. And we're going to continue to use a zero-based budget process to keep on looking at the services we provide and how we provide those services. So 14. So this is our updated projected outlook. In 2019, the four lines is the top, the lines that say adopted revenue and adopted expenditures, that's where we started. On the revenue side, you'll see the big increase in revenue is due to interest earnings. That is just related to economic conditions right now that are favorable for the kind of investments that we have. And then on expenditures, there's been some adjustments there, mostly related to some, no real changes in service levels, with the exception of one disclosure that in the 2019 adopted budget included funding of city arts and branch libraries, and that continues throughout this model. So people are asking about that. That's my last slide on the operating budget. Does anyone have questions about the operating budget before we move on to capital?
I have a question on this deficit for 2021.
Yes.
Now, what's the cause of that?
Deficit in 2021. Okay, it's those deficits starting in 2021 are the result of a structural deficit. So in a nutshell, our expenditures growth is outpacing our revenue growth.
I see some of that with your interest earnings.
Right,
Going
and
down.
we don't expect interest earnings. We're expecting to be very strong this year, but I think even at this point, the earnings for the last, like this month, or we don't expect interest earnings to be as strong in future years as they are this year.
So that's where that
That's
deficit.
mostly, yeah, probably mostly where.
All right, thank you.
So Dave, I would dovetail with that. If you look at any of our budgets, the third, sometimes in the past it's been the second year, but the third, the fourth, or fifth year, we're always showing a deficit because we don't know what our income, our flow is going to be, and so there are just guesses, right, at that point of what our income is going to be. It will always be adjusted to reflect what our real income is, and we will never operate in a deficit in the current budget year.
The current year looks strong.
All right, ready for capital? All right, so the CIP is our capital improvement. How we budget for capital is over a 10-year period. This year, well, last year, 2018, the City Council challenged us to develop a prioritization model for each and every one of our CIP projects. There's about, so we developed a model, collaborated with them on assigning weighting to each of the points in the model. So we have scored each and every CIP project. There's about 200 of them, so it's actually been a lot of fun. The other thing we do is we develop financial capacity models for the different funds that fund capital projects. We look at the operating budget impact of these capital projects, which is important. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then also, we get feedback from the City Council and we align the CIP to the direction that they're seeking. Slide 16. So the prioritization matrix the city council directed us to implement last year puts a lot of weight on the community investments plan, or the comp plan for short. I think you're involved with that.
Yes,
So, thanks for your service. So that assigns points for aligning to the priorities in the comp plan. Aligning to one of the priorities is to maintain what we have, and then also to invest in the established central area. We assign also other points for alignment with other planning processes. For example, the aquatics master plan would be an example of that. Financial considerations is related to leverage from outside sources, or what the impact of the project would be. It's maybe its return on investment, and other considerations are things like engineering studies. So on slide 17, it is linked to the operating budget by presenting them at the same time. That linkage, we're really working, really accenting the linkage between the two. And we'll show you in a few slides further on that they're linked. When you receive your property tax bill, it's actually for the debt service fund and the general fund. So I'll show you how those are linked. And then, of course, the CIP aligns to the same mission as the operating budget. So we want to make sure we're all headed in the right direction with the scarce resources we have. Slide 18. So, this is the mill levies that we levy for the general fund and the debt service fund. Because the direction last year was to implement phase 1 of the police staffing study. So in order to do that, 1 mill was shifted from the debt service fund to the general fund. So the debt service fund mill levy right now is 7.5. You can advance to the next slide, Valerie. So this is showing it over a longer period, back to 1971. There were a lot of years in the recent past where the debt service fund mill levy was 10. So now it's 7.5. And what that does is it places a lot of constraint on the debt service fund in order to fund projects in the CIP. So it makes the prioritization matrix very important. So next slide. Okay. So this is slide 20. So this is the major groupings of the CIP. So you'll notice that there, water and sewer are a big part of the CIP. Those are funded with water and sewer revenues. Arterials is a big part of the CIP, that's for streets. And then public facilities also includes big heavy equipment like fire trucks and big street maintenance equipment. Yes.
I'm gonna get slapped upside the head because I should know better. I thought they were working on the price now.
It is.
So
This is the whole CIP.
So they basically put 91 million in and take 91 million out.
Well, we got this question in another day. So the airport's actually 33 million. So airport funds, the airport projects are $33 million over, airport revenue funds 33 million over 10 years, but actually a lot of their projects leverage federal funds.
I know it's got two big federal grants.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you go to the next slide, what you'll notice is the airport's 33 million here. This is where it comes from. Oh, well, sorry, we'll get to that.
Well,
But they'll match up.
The previous slide showed the airport 91 million, about 91.
Right, okay, so that's why. Right, so where it goes, airport is that over 10 years, but where it comes from is federal plus airport.
Okay, so it doesn't really impact property tax.
No, not at all. In
All right,
fact,
fine.
I think by federal regulation, they cannot receive any outside support.
Okay.
Yeah, I got more detail here.
No, that's,
But it is a
that's
tricky.
closer to my understanding.
Yeah, so, right, so when it says airport revenue, that means the revenue that the airport earns, and plus federal, which is their grants, equals the airport part of the CIP.
Okay,
So,
And why does that have to be included in this?
thank you.
these pie charts are for the entire CIP, so they're inclusive of everything. So enterprise funds, which are self-supporting, as well as the taxing funds.
And where are the other enterprise funds?
Water is self-sustaining.
Water, yeah,
Sewer.
water and sewer. And
Is it
air.
not broken out? It's not broken out, I think it is. Anyway,
Golf is enterprise fund.
Yeah, golf doesn't have any debt right
Golf
now.
would be what?
There aren't any golf projects in the CHP. That's true.
Well, that's fine. Thank you.
So I'm sorry, yeah, we've been focusing a lot on the general fund and the debt service fund on the taxing funds, but this is the whole CIP. So the whole thing,
So it might be good to break that enterprise, highlight it in some way.
No, if
To
there's
make it
no,
more, I mean, clearly it said all CIP projects, but people begin to question.
Yeah.
well, if the golf courses don't have any CIP projects, they actually don't belong on that budget.
right, so
Right,
the-
yeah, no, I was referring to enterprise, you have enterprise funds outside of this other stuff, right?
right, and the only three in here are airport, sewer, and water.
Oh,
That's, I mean, stormwater is pretty small, it's probably in the other funds part, that's also an increase. And golf, there's no golf debt in the CIP, and then any transit projects in the CIP are matched with general obligation.
Only thing doing is debt service. small.
Are you ready to move, are we ready? Ready
Yeah,
for
yeah,
something? Okay.
I heard the negative.
Ready for something? No. I might just, ready. Okay, so on the tax supported side of the CIP, so that's the part that's not airport, water, or sewer. So the tax supported side, which is the part where all the tricky decision making happens, right? So there are three funding sources that are flexible. And the debt service fund, the transient gas tax fund, and the local sales tax fund. So the debt service fund is what's called completely fungible. That means you can use it on any sort of governmental activity. I like to think of this as if you have a birthday party, a birthday card, someone sends you a card for your birthday and it has a check on it, no strings attached. You spend it for your birthday, right? So the transient gas tax and the local sales tax fund to me are like getting gift cards from Dillon's or Walmart. There's a lot you can do with it, but not everything, right? So the transient gas tax can only be used for assets associated with convention and tourism. Right now, we direct that to Century 2 rehab projects and also to arts and culture projects like art museum renovations. Well, on the operation side, yes, but on the capital side, yeah. Right, exactly. And then the local sales tax fund, that is for half of the sales tax of city of Wichita gets, and that can only be used for roads, bridges, and highways. Number on to 23. So determining debt capacity is a really important part of what we do when we're developing the CIP. There's a lot of policies that impact the amount of debt that the CIP, the city of Wichita can have. The first is the legal debt limit from the state of Kansas. We have bond covenants in place for water and sewer bonds. And then we also use the coverage ratio and get a lot of feedback from rating agencies. Number 24,
What is our rating?
AA class.
Thank you.
And has that been recently affected one way or the other?
No, it's been really steady. So the legal debt limit is set by the state of Kansas. The city is currently at only a quarter of the legal debt limit that the state of Kansas says that we can have. I think this is a much more of a concern for smaller communities that might have a large water or sewer treatment plant project and that has a lot of debt compared to their tax base. Unfortunately, this isn't a concern we have. 25?
Well, I had a question.
Yes,
This is on the Kellogg.
yes.
When is that gonna be paid off? The Kellogg, improvements.
Yeah.
It moves along.
Pardon?
Well, actually,
Yeah, well, the last project would need to be finished and then the bonds would probably be issued next year. And so,
But there are portions of Kellogg that are being paid off. And the hope is, especially this last portion, which was heavily subsidized by the state because they had a lot of interest in the turnpike aspects of it. not to get too deep into the weeds, but we're hoping that in the future, some of that sales tax that is being used to pay for Kellogg can be used for maintaining our current neighborhood and our terminals. So that's a real big plus, getting Kellogg paid off.
But it would have to be extended by a public vote, right? No?
No, not at all. That county sales tax that we get approximately half of is an ongoing tax.
So that's the one back on the other side, the local sales tax, that's for roads, bridges.
Which is $35.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Which is a great question.
So that we rapidly, we have pretty short terms for our debt, so we pay it off quickly. So that's where we're gonna have some capacity there in the local sales tax fund. This is for the debt service fund. So you might hear sometimes about housing affordability. Like if your income is this much, you should spend 30% on housing, right? There's some rules of thumb for that. The rule of thumb or benchmark for debt capacity is that you should spend 67% or less of your property tax on servicing your debt. So that rule of thumb or benchmark is the blue line at the top, and then the reddish line underneath it shows you where we expect to be with the CIP that was approved last year. So as you see, like what the council member was saying about the local sales tax debt, it's also true of the debt service fund debt. As it's paid off, you get more capacity in the future. Slide 26. There's a few updates to the CIP that we're already modeling into the CIP. One is the aquatics master plan, which was approved yesterday by the city council. It compresses.
Yes, finally.
It compresses the schedule so that all the improvements will be ready by summer of 2022. So we've modeled that into the CIP. It's just like what he said, expect more street maintenance projects and fewer freeway projects. We're keeping an eye on how the library range study moves along. And also there's quite a few police and fire stations who were included in the last CIP, so we're moving those forward this year.
Talking about neighborhoods.
And so that is my slides. And if you've got any questions, also, if you want to move to can you pull up the budget simulator? So while she's doing that, I've got some handouts here for, it's your reward. It's the website for the budget simulator. You're welcome.
Look at all the snacks we have. This is great.
The snacks, they're Smarties,
So
they're
many snacks
smartier.
in District 3.
Better than what I got, son.
There you go. It's like reverse trajectory.
We go towards roads.
Roads, yes, but it has to be, that personal sales tax has to be for road bridges and maintenance on that sort of infrastructure.
So did you see that?
We're hoping,
I don't have any internet on my
Oh,
laptop, so.
no, okay, let me see. We are gonna do this the fun way.
You want to get my wife?
Use your phone.
Yeah.
Get passive phone on it.
So you doubled up on purple.
I have a tablet.
While you're walking around the gateway, how much did this cost the state to install?
The software, $6,995. It's a year-long subscription.
I had a question.
Year long, it's gonna end in June.
Well, this one will end in June. But we can use it for, there's a module that you can just use for planning processes for prioritization. So if you want to get on there, it's wichita.budgetsimulator.com.
that's on the standard.
It's on this handout.
Wichita.gov and there's a link.
Oh yeah, or you go to wichita.gov, right. So there's a video here that shows you what it is, or you can go ahead and just get started. We picked this software because I really liked what it did on my computer, but when I saw what it did on my phone, I was really impressed. It's very easy to use. So go ahead and get started. So it defaults to a screen at the front, and the screen at the front says to enter your residential property value. The amount that we already have entered there is the average that was provided by the county appraiser's office. So it starts at the screen like this. So that is your city of Wichita average tax bill, which is about $516.
I'll take that.
We're gonna change.
So there you go. So what you can do is, if you see here, there's all these different service area groupings: public safety, park and rec, police, library, arts and culture, and support services. So what do you guys want to learn about tonight?
So just for fun, this average 516 you're talking about
Yes.
includes property tax?
Property tax to the city of Wichita, because your property tax
I
bill.
understand school district.
Yeah.
Okay.
$137,000 house.
Okay, so-
You can change that in Cindy.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay, property tax, and bank card.
Yeah, but this is just your house, yeah.
The simulator is really great because you can decide what your priorities are and find out what your tax bill would be based on your priorities, up or down, or, so you
And
guys.
that's an
can-
option.
Now, what do we, this is what we have to do, either is, you choice.
So you pick one of these things, like, so you want, what would you like to pick to start with? Let's start with police. So you go to police, and it says, and so it has percentages at the top of the screen. And as you move along, if you want to increase, so it tells you like the school resource officers. If you stay at the middle, you continue